Okay, here we are, Mr. Mysterious Cris Black. I'm so thrilled that you're here and that you're willing to share bits of your story. So tell us about yourself. Like, who are you?
My name is Cris Eli Blak. I am a writer and a performer. I write basically anything I need to at any given moment to express the voices in my head, whether that be a play or a song or a poem or a screenplay. But ever since I was like 12 and I saw Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, I said, I want to tell the stories of people who look like me and who live like me. I went to a high school that was 90% Black and Hispanic, and was just blown away by just constantly being in an environment with people of different cultures and different colors. And then to come home, I never lived in a white or a Black neighborhood. It was always immigrant communities, South Asian, Hispanic, just hard-working people going day by day. And so I've, luckily been able to take those experiences as well as the experiences I've had outside of that and that friends have had, and have been able to put a voice to it through different mediums. And which leads me to meeting people like you and being able to talk about these things. And I think that especially in times like these, the voice is the most powerful weapon.
Yeah.
People talk about guns a lot. People talk about, baseball bats and stuff. But I think the greatest weapon that is not easily taken away is someone's voice. And so I just, as long as I have one, and as long as I wake up in the morning, I'm going to use it. And it might not always work out, but I'm gonna try it. And if I do it 100 times, I'm gonna win at least once.
I like, what you said, about living in what I would still consider a diverse community.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not everyone's experience, to go to a school where you have, sort of kind of an international component,
Yeah.
And I'm sure that informs a lot of your worldview.
I live in Louisville now, but I was born in Louisville, but I was raised in Houston, Texas.
Okay.
There's a huge difference between those two cities. And I can only imagine who I would be if I was raised in Louisville, because Louisville is very Black, white.
Yes.
Really biracial. Whereas Houston, you walk down any given street, you're going to see 5 people, and they're all going to be from different countries.
I love that.
Very much a melting pot of people. So yeah, I was always raised around people, went to school with people speaking different languages.
Yes.
In the cafeteria, you'll have one table of people, and all you hear them speaking Spanish, and different forms of Spanish. And then at this table, you hear people speaking in Bengali and different languages. And so I'm really lucky to have been able to grow up around those kind of different people. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm so excited for you that you had that experience, because I think also a lot of people who live here don't ever venture out beyond here.
Yeah.
There's a tendency for that to sort of create certain kinds of limitations as it relates to acceptance. I think the more you're exposed to the broader world, there's a certain kind of empathy that's built. It just gets sort of ingrained. You know what it means to be other. You know what it means to go to a place and be the minority.
Oh yeah.
And you know what it feels like to look around and see other people who look just like you and operate like you. And
right.
So, great. So how old are you now?
I'm 21.
So you're 21. Have you, as a 21-year-old man living in the year 2020, have you ever experienced racism?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. I can think as far back to elementary school, probably second grade. I remember I was friends with a boy who was Indian and a boy who was Persian.
Mm-hmm.
And the Persian boy, I think we were I don't know what we were doing, but it was in public. And the Persian kid said, "Oh, you're like my brother," to me.
Uh-huh.
And then the other kid said, "He can't be your brother because he's black." And that's the first time I can remember. I mean, I knew I was African American.
Right.
I come from a family of people who make sure you know you're African American.
Yeah.
You know those kind of people who are like, you come out and they're like, "Hey, you're black." And so I was aware of it, but it had never been stated by someone outside of my intimate family. And so that was kind of like, oh. And sprouted out of that was the conversation of, yeah, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Even though you might be in a group of people, all who are different and all who are technically brown skinned,
Right.
you have a different kind of brown. And you have a different set of statistics and limitations that come as soon as you're born. As soon as you're born, those things come with you.
Yes.
And off of that, I can think of 5th grade. We had a Black History Month assignment. Well, actually, no, I can go to 4th grade because I was in 4th grade in 2008. Huh?
That's a great memory.
I do. It's a blessing and a curse. It's all up there. I was in 4th grade in 2008 when Obama got elected the first time. And I remember feeling that sense of pride that we all felt. We all felt like, oh, nobody can do anything to us now. Like, I was like, I can go break the law and no one can arrest me because Obama. Like, this is my excuse. This Obama. And I remember going to school very excited, and we were watching the inauguration or something that morning, or a recap of it. And the kids in my class, and even though I went to a high school that was mostly Black and Hispanic, I went to an elementary and middle school that was mostly white. And so I remember watching it on the little TV in the classroom, and the kids in my class using pencils and acting like they were guns and shooting at the TV while he was giving his speech. And that same year, I remember being lied on, because at the beginning of school, before we went into the class, we all had to stand outside in a line in the hallway before we could go into the classroom. And you weren't supposed to be talking, or you were supposed to get out of line. And anyone who knew me as a kid, I was a quiet kid. I wasn't a disruptive kid. But I was in a line of disruptive kids. And when the teacher came out and said, you know, who was that? Who's making all this noise? They pointed to me. They said, it's him. He's over here. He's happy. I swear to God. They said he's all happy because Obama got elected, and that's what he's talking about. And so I got lunch detention in 4th grade, which to me was like going to prison. I was horrified. And I still don't think my family knows about it.
So this is a group of children. This isn't one child. They are conspiring together.
Yeah. Like Lord of the Flies level.
Wow.
And like any kid in that line could have easily said, no, he wasn't. But no one did. And so that was that. And then the next year in 5th grade, we had a Black History Month assignment, and it was basically just pick a Black figure in history and draw them. That was it. Easy assignment. So I'm doing my Jackie Robinson. I'm happy, I'm proud. This is 28 days out of my life that I'm like, this is me.
Yes.
And then so I finished my picture, and all the other kids in the class are sitting at like a different table, and I go over to look at theirs, and they all have drawn like this black faces, the color black, the red lips, like the typical minstrel kind of blackface image that I didn't know about at that time. But I knew it wasn't right. And they all had, the fire truck red lips and everything. And that was their Black history icons. And when we were doing it in the library. And when we went back to the class, I told the teacher, I was like, hey, they were doing this. And they had thrown away the pictures in the class trash can. So it was easily visible still.
They threw the pictures away. Was it like they were throwing away as if they knew it was wrong?
I think they knew it was wrong, but at the same time, they didn't stuff it in their bag or anything. They threw it in the classroom trash can. Yeah. So I think they knew it was wrong, but I also feel like they weren't afraid of any consequences if anyone said anything to them.
They didn't value it. It wasn't something to take with their parents.
Yeah, exactly. It was, okay, we had fun. That's done. And I told the teacher, and people will act one way in front of you. They'll act concerned in front of you, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'll get to the bottom of this." And what he did, all he did was stand in front of the class and ask, "Did you guys do this?" As if they're going to say yes. And even though the evidence is right behind us, and they said, "What? No." And he said, "Okay, class dismissed." And so yeah, that was kind of the earliest onset of racism. And I think I've experienced the same racism that any person of color has, being followed around in the store.
Yes.
I remember my sister had a job at a store, and I would go in just to say hi to her and buy stuff and use her discount. And the manager, and I had been in there, and it was very clear I was related to her, but the manager followed me around the store, and not even discreetly. If I was in an aisle, he was in the aisle, and that has happened several times. The typical thing of walking into an elevator and someone clutches their purse, which I'll never understand, because if we're in an elevator, I can't open it, I can't run. So why I would get on an elevator, let it close and move, and then just take your purse? I'm not just gonna stand in the corner with it till it open back up, and then I never understood that. But I think I've experienced the typical kind of racist things. Luckily, I haven't experienced the harshest possible racism, and I pray I never do. So why I would get on an elevator, let it close and move, and then just take your purse? I'm not just gonna stand in the corner with it till it open back up, and then I never understood that. But I think I've experienced the typical kind of racist things. Luckily, I haven't experienced the harshest possible racism, and I pray I never do. But I feel like more than racism, I feel what's worse than racism is the fear and paranoia.
Yes.
The personal feelings of it, because we can't live our lives carefree like some people can.
Right.
We can't just go out and do things.
Yeah.
We can, but it might not be the best idea.
Risk.
There are definitely risks, and you always have to think, who's watching me?
Mm-hmm.
How are they interpreting what I'm doing?
Right.
What is their immediate opinion of me?
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always tried to just kind of be the kind of person to, this is the thing, it doesn't matter what you have on. I don't think it matters what job you have. They're gonna see you how they're gonna see you.
Right.
I wear suits like they're sweatpants. It's just what I like to do. I just like dressing nice. And I, at a time, thought, okay, this will make me safer, because they expect me to come in talking and dressing a certain kind of way. So if I do the opposite of that, and I show I'm well dressed, and I show I'm educated and literate, they will be more accepting. Mm-hmm. Also not true.
So what impact, though, you shared these stories, and and I really appreciate you going there and that you have such great recall. What impact do you think that those events had on you?
I think that those events, I think I was both, they were bad, of course, but I think I was lucky to experience them at a young age. I think that if I had gone through that early point in life without any knowledge of it, or without any first-hand knowledge of it, I might not be talking to you right now, because I might be one of those people who believes racism doesn't exist. If I had lived that whole life and just everything was peachy Kodak moment clean, and I had just gone through it all without any struggle or any insult, I would have thought, oh, I don't know what they're talking about, because this never happened to me. It's not my experience, so I don't know what they're complaining about. So I definitely think from a young age being able to do that. The only reason I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, as told by Alex Haley, in middle school was because of what happened in 5th grade. So really any self-taught knowledge was based on those early events. The only reason I care about why isn't there more Black history in textbooks is because based on those events, I went to the library and bought a bunch of books about Black people and was able to say, oh, none of this is in the textbooks. And just being able, and again, having a family who was brutally honest about their experiences. My grandfather is the quietest, wisest man you will ever meet, but he was arrested at least twice in the 60s for actual peaceful protest, like just sit-ins and stuff like that. Was put in jail twice, and this man is the model of a professional. Like, he would never cause any legal trouble, but he was placed behind bars. And so just having a family that was really honest about all that and really honest about my history and my ancestry. So yeah, it's had an impact, but I would say it's probably had a positive, it's had a negative impact the way it has a negative impact for all of us, but it has a positive impact knowledge-wise.
Right.
Because I can go in a room and you can talk about, I remember in school, and even my sister learned this, they told us when the slaves were happy being slaves. They told us that slaves were happy being slaves. It was like their job. And I can walk into a room and discount that completely now. Whereas if I had never gone through anything, if I had never had the independent education of trying to figure out, okay, why do people act like this? I might tell other people, slaves were happy. They didn't care. And so while I do think racism and hate has a negative impact in general to anyone who experiences it, I do think that going through things like that puts you really in tune with the time and the place that you live in. It makes you very aware that no matter what you do, someone's going to be watching you and someone's going to suspect you. That's both as a person of color and a man. I've always been taught, don't ever be alone in a room.
Yes.
Without cameras, without anything. Don't ever be alone in a room. Don't ever be alone in a room with someone else either. Have at least one witness always.
Right.
Because you never know what someone's going to say you might have done. And there's no one to prove it, especially if it's someone who, is of a different shade and a different class and status of you. It's two voices against each other, and your voice, no matter how well you speak, no matter how white you speak, is not legitimate enough to make people believe you.
Right.
And so it's always, it's always hesitation to going outside, and it's always, hesitation to make eye contact, or to speak to certain people. just not knowing how it's gonna come across to them.
Right.
So while I probably could have gone without those experiences, I am glad it happened, because it did give me insight into, okay, this is how people are going to act, whether you mistreat them or not, whether
Right.
you talk to them or not, whether you associate yourself with them or not.